Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don and I'm a digital marketer. Before we get into the episode with Zachary Brooks, I just wanted to play just a quick message from our sponsor. This episode of Life Science Success is brought to you by D3 Digital Media Marketing. Dive into the digital world with confidence and creativity on your side. D3 Digital Media Marketing is your all-in-one solution for making a lasting impact online. From the vibrant, engaging world of social media marketing, podcasts, and webinars, to the strategic depths of website development, SEO, pay-per-click, email, and content marketing, we tailor our approach to fit your unique brand story. Let's elevate your presence, connect with your audience, and drive success together. Your digital journey starts here. Visit d3digitalmedia.com to learn more. So in this episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Zachary Brooks. He's a serial entrepreneur, a #1 best-selling author, and founder of UGenome AI. Dr. Brooks brings a unique blend of expertise in genomic medicine, technology startups, and international athletics to our discussion on the future of personalized healthcare. So welcome, Zach.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me on here. It's really, I'm excited to have a chance to talk to you for a really good reason.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. As we were getting ready to go live, I'm actually trying to type while we're like here live right now. So if you see me looking down, it's just a matter of trying to, paste the YouTube link in here for anybody that wants to join us live. I don't normally do that. Normally we're live on LinkedIn, but for some reason at times LinkedIn gets quirky. So there we go.
No worries.
I just posted it. So folks that do want to join us live can at least come in. But anyway, the focus of the interview today really is on you, not on the technology and the challenges that we're having. So I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and then sort of what brought you to the point of being a founder in the startup world in life sciences.
Yeah, thanks. The great question. I get asked that a fair amount, but the way you're framing it, it suddenly seems more profound. So let's see if I can match the question. So Zach Brooks, so originally from Denver, Colorado, but at this point in my life, I've lived in 10 states, 7 countries. And, I've done a lot of different things. Been in different startup companies. I was a B-level Hollywood actor, competed internationally on various capacities and times and so forth. And I think the through line for me is what I call, and this is from the world of decision sciences, anticipated regret. So anticipated regret formally is if you think you might regret something in the future, it's better to then do that action today. So anticipated regret is not yet regret. You're like, if I don't do this, am I going to feel bad that I didn't try later? And a lot of studies just show that if you don't try, you're not as happy. And I just really have, for a long time in my life, I think right when I was around 20, I had this sensation after going to a party and listening to some folks speak that they wish they had done X, Y, and Z and so forth, that I didn't ever want to have that conversation with someone. I regretted I didn't try, whatever it is. So I'm not sure if that's a great introduction, but it's sort of something that drives me in my life. I mean, I've started the company and written the books and other things because I just didn't want to think later I could have tried to do that.
I think it's really funny because just to go through your credentials a little bit, as well, right? I mean, with the PhD and the MBA, the one thing that oftentimes you'll run into is, people that will say, hey, look, I could have also went off and gotten a PhD or an MBA. Yes, you could have. And, I certainly am an example of that, but at the same time, having not done it means that you've not done it. And so, I sort of, kind of liken people back to that, that look, if this is something that you really set out to do, then go do it. I mean, there are plenty of people that go through 3/4 of the process and just decide it's not for them. There are plenty of people that just never get started. And I don't begrudge anybody for any of that, but at the same time, to me, if you want to go climb a mountain or you want to go start a company or what have you, good for you. And good for you for doing it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that, Don. Yeah, I can certainly talk about myself a little bit more broadly. So, like I said, born in Denver, ended up graduating with my bachelor's degree in history and political science. Eventually got in a plane, went to Europe in a one-way ticket, $100 one-way ticket in my pocket, landed there. And it ended up working as a roofer in Germany to make some money, then to go study at the university in Berlin. And I was studying German and having to speak German on the rooftops with a very different type of German than I would end up learning at the university. So that was sort of a starting point, I guess, right after college. And then after I got back, I was in Europe for a couple of years, and I worked also in Spain as a bartender. And so speaking Spanish there in Germany, German in Germany, I ended up in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. And my first two startup experiences formally. Like I've always been kind of a startup person, but formally, first I worked at E-Trade just 6 months before it went public. Now it was too late for me to benefit from that, but it was really fascinating to see well-financed VC startup, but having all these cultural aspects of a startup. So all this excitement, all this wonder, all this sort of like nervous energy. And then when that ended, I went to a company called VeriSign. So VeriSign is basically the S and HTTPS. So at that point in the internet's development, a lot of people didn't want to do banking online because they couldn't trust that if I send my information across the internet, is it going to be hacked or stolen and so forth. So at one point, VeriSign had 99% market share. And one of my titles there was cryptographic business operations. So anyway, and it goes on from there. I can continue to talk, but I'll just pause if you have any other questions or directions you want me to go in. Eventually, I can talk about UGenome as well. But
Yeah,
maybe that's
so
a good starting point for just me willing to like try different things at different times.
I mean, I definitely hear a lot of the tech background in your background, and then what led you
Yeah.
to life sciences?
Well, so I've had two kidney transplants in my life. So I've been around life sciences a long time in my life. And so very specifically, when I think about that now, I think about the miracle of modern medications and how great they have been and how great they're going to be. And one of the things we're working on at UGenome is a personalized medication service, which supports a software development tool called ProPEX, which is a pharmacogenomic extractor. And so pharmacogenomics is basically responses to medications. So everyone's body is going to respond to a medication. When we say response to medication, we want it to respond positively to give us the benefit we want and limit the things that we don't want in our body. So I've been around biotech for a long time as a person. I hate to say the word patient, but I'll just use it as a shortcut as a patient dealing with the medical system and my body and everything else. And then eventually, I was always very focused on finding other people to get better treatment options than I've had myself. So various advocacy and other kind of programs, I've always been focused on the same thing. I want people to get better treatment options so they don't have to do what I did. And I also really want to pay it forward. I mean, if it weren't for 10,000 people working in the 20th century, I never would have lived beyond, a very young age. And I want to be one of those 10,000 people who helps someone else who can say, if it weren't for X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't be here in 2079 or whatever it is. So I have a real sense of mission when I do UGenome work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess how did your background in the tech companies, both at E-Trade and VeriSign, how did that help you as you started to think about starting UGenome?
Yeah, I think they were just sort of, if you think about it, paintings. I think Picasso is reported to have bought canvases, and the first thing he did was paint black on the canvas, and then he would paint white on top and whatever else. So maybe those things served as just, you know, colors on a canvas because it wasn't like immediately it's like I'm going to do my own startup now. Because after the two Silicon Valley startups, I went to Hollywood, and I have 10 credits on IMDb as a pretty bad B-level Hollywood actor. But all of that training actually is really fantastic to be in a startup company because if you have to go on audition, for which you have almost no opportunity to get picked, it's kind of what being a startup person's like. So I think the things that are more really relevant though is through the acting classes, really having to study other humans and read them and listen to them with a lot of empathy and look at their eyes and look at their face and so forth, without any judgment. Like, who is this person in front of me right now? Well, okay, that's fascinating. Now let me listen to them more because it's more fascinating than it was before. and then getting out there and being rejected over and over again. I think those things are a little bit more relevant to my startup life. It wasn't until I got to my PhD a little bit later that I started thinking a little bit more about being in a life science company directly.
Yeah, I feel like the PhD world also teaches you an awful lot about rejection as well. Maybe not at the same level, but you definitely have people that you have to try and figure out. Okay, so this is a pretty hard path forward, but let me sort of find my way regardless. But what
Yeah, I
then?
think you're absolutely right about that, Don. Yeah.
Yeah, what then led you to the point of wanting to start UGenome, and then also, what's the mission of the company?
Well, the vision I usually use for the shorthand is that we make genomic medicine personal and accessible for everyone. And that really drives everything we do. We kind of thread that in all sorts of mission and vision value statements, a lot of our product development, management philosophy, and everything else. So when I got to University of Arizona to start my PhD, I ended up serving as the grad student body president. And the advocacy person inside of me was very much for PhD students trying to get positions other than become a professor. Not because becoming a professor is bad at all, it's just there's not that many positions. But someone working in the lab on a reagent that could help detect cancer better under an MRI situation, for example, that's really exciting. And why not try to help that person find or create their own life? So I was very much an advocate as the grad student body president, and then me with some other folks, our team of graduate student leaders, we raised $232,000, I think was the exact amount, for graduate student commercialization. And that meant pretty necessarily that most of the people coming out of graduate student commercialization was going to be in biotech. So then indirectly, I've been a part of 3 life science companies from the University of Arizona through the Tech Launch Arizona, the commercialization office there. So it was really as an advocate. Then at that point, I was really starting to combine like my startup experiences, my advocacy, on my own sort of what's informed my life, very directly. My 2 kidney transplants, my parents were my donors, all the medications and all the other things I've gone through. I was very much, biotech is very important because this graduate student in the lab is going to help save someone's life someday. And to me, there is zero fog about that whatsoever. I can see a direct line between her research or his research, whoever it is, and getting something done that's going to help a human have a better life. So, when I kind of found that thread, it was much easier to say, this is what I really need to do.
Yeah, and then can you explain how the tools that you have at UGenome and how they're revolutionizing genomic medicine?
Well, I hope that we can help revolutionize genomic medicine in some way. So we have 2 key tools right now. So I'll start with the first one that we licensed from the University of Arizona, which is called Max. And right now we talk about it as a somatic variant detector. And that means that what happens in the course of your life is what we want to detect through this tool and from a genetic level, and then try to treat things on that basis. So the somatic variant detector has a cancer variant detector capability, so that instead of just reading 70% of NGS data, so not NGS data, we could maybe access 85%, 90%, and then get better at variant rich disease states such as cancer. So lung cancer, certainly. What are the other kind of 4 cancers? I had them all here in mind, but there's I'll come back to me in a second, I'm sure. So there's certain cancers that are very variant rich and driven. And how do you track those from a pathological level or a data level quickly to keep up with it and then get the treatment to that person that you need in a very precise way? And so we have something called Max, which is to really detect the variants of cancer very, very quickly. So hopefully that revolutionizes how people get treatment for cancer in that particular space. The other tool we have is called ProPEX, and that's a pharmacogenomic extractor. So genetic information is really complex. Pharmacogenomic information is even more complex. It's not just reading the genes, it's also how genes interact with a foreign agent coming into the body, which is a medication. So the interactions there make this even more complex. And so we're building a tool that can look at that information, extract some information that's relevant to help a patient get a better treatment option through his or her medications. And so as much as it would be nice to know in 20 years what I'm going to suffer from a genetic test, we think it would be better to have in 2 weeks information on which medications are good for you and which medications to avoid. So those are the 2 tools we're working on right now, and we hope that they are revolutionary. But we appreciate there's a lot of good people out there working very hard, and if they do very well and get another person a better treatment option, we're going to celebrate them, and we would like to work with them and partner with them. We're very confident in our abilities to do really good work because we're very much mission driven as a group of people. So if it's not this series of tools, we expect the next series of tools to be the ones that make a big impact in the world, and we can build a great company from it.
Can maybe just take a little pivot away from UGenome for a second and
Sure.
talk about your book. So, can you tell me more
Okay.
about your book? What is it about, and what are some of the foundations that led you to want to write a book in the first place?
Yeah, so the book is called the How to Algorithm series. I've written two of them. The first one is called Discovering Your Human Algorithm, and that's the easiest one to talk about. So during my PhD, I was kind of looking around, and since I was grad student body president, I was exposed to a lot of different PhD students from different colleges, science and humanities and so forth. And in fact, my PhD, I graduated from both College of Science and Humanities, so I had a lot of exposure to different types of graduate students. And going to grad school is not a very happy experience for most people. In fact, I got a mention in Nature with a colleague of mine, Dr. Ezra Smith, and we showed that graduate student studies decrease your happiness, period. So I kept looking around at like, okay, who is happy? And like, oh yeah, I went to a 24-hour round the clock running thing over the weekend, or I did this massive knitting project, or I did some painting project, or, just sort of those things started to stand out. And then I thought to myself, what makes me happy in life? And I'd read like The Flow and some really good psychology books. And so eventually I came up with my personal algorithm, the things that would make me happy. And I thought I would just put that into a book. I mean, algorithm was more of a concept. It was a step-by-step formula someone could follow in order to say, this particular thing makes me happy, so therefore I'm going to do it and give myself a little bit of happiness today, as opposed to always thinking that I'm not good enough as this particular PhD student. So the 6 chapters in Discovering Your Human Algorithm are athletics. To be human is to move. And then after you move for a while, you start to see new things. And so the second A is adventure. To be human is to explore. And after you're moving around for a while, you're seeing some different patterns. It's learning. So then the next A is academics. To be human is to learn. But after you're learning a while, you're getting really good at learning. You want to be creative. And then the fourth A is art. So to be human is to be creative and create new things. And then the idea after that, after you're really creative and things for a while, eventually you're thinking, I want to help other people through this artistic enterprise I'm up to. So the fifth A is advocacy, to help other humans. And then the sixth A is the human algorithm, which is how to improve life on Earth in the 21st century, because it's wonderful to have technologies, and I love doing this technologies a lot. But how do we treat each other as humans? That's really significant, because you and I know very well, and lots of other people know very well, like we're awash with technological history where technologies do push things forward, but it doesn't make us better or happier all the time. So we have to have a human algorithm that supports the development of any technology. So that was really the basis of the book. And I had a friend, Kate, at the time. She was doing her PhD, and she was very helpful because she was very supportive, like, yeah, that's a good idea, and that's a good idea. So I have to give her credit because she was the first person who kind of like listened to this idea and supported it. And eventually, I don't know, 5 years later, I wrote the book. But anyway, that's a little bit about the book.
The 6 A's make up the algorithm.
Yeah, the 6 A's make up the algorithm to improve life on Earth in the 21st century.
Very good.
Yeah.
So, one of the other things, I mean, you had talked about all the different things that you're involved in. You're also the founder of the World Transplant Athletes. How do you see
Yes.
the intersection of the organ transplantation and genomic medicine?
Well, that's kind of what I'm working for. I want to create the intersection. I can kind of see how it can grow together like two different trees. Um, but that is sort of the prompt, I'll put it like that, for a lot of what I'm doing, but also a goal for a lot of what I'm doing. So a person who's had 2 kidney transplants, that's me. I've been around a lot of other people who've had organ transplants. And what's we realized as a group, World Transplant Athletes, at the time it was just transplant athletes, but we realized as a group is that we all move a lot. We go to we're in international competitions and national competitions, and we compete really hard as athletes who happen to have transplants, and we talk about our training and so forth. that we realize that we're maybe 5, 10%, a small percentage of people who get a transplant who stay that active. And so we're really motivated that a person who maybe realizes today and 6 weeks from now, I'm going to have a transplant, he or she has some option or awareness that, hey, an exercise program of walking, an exercise program of lifting light weights would really be really good for you. So what we're trying to do is create pilot projects with different universities, see if we can work with a transplant center directly to have them create a project where transplant recipients today can figure out which um, which healthcare plan to follow, just activity, exercise to follow. So we then need to support all of this with good research. And then once we get the research, we want to push this research online through our marketing. So we have 4,000 followers on Instagram, for example. So at some point, what I would really like to do is have UGenome have some focus on transplant medications and medicine, or earn enough money through UGenome that I can fund World Transplant Athletes in a way that we don't need to get grant funding in the same way that other nonprofits do, and really pursue a certain kind of mission, and then maybe partner with bigger groups who are doing wonderful things in the world, Gates Foundation and so forth. So anyway, I'd like it to grow there, and I'm working very hard to make the dream come true of supporting World Transplant Athletes through UGenome.
And then I also read in your background that you sort of from an athletic standpoint, you focused in on cycling and soccer as well. How does being an athlete also tie to being an entrepreneur and the things that you're doing at UGenome?
I love the progression of your questions. They're catching me off guard, and I can start to see them now how they're coming together. Really, really sophisticated. Thanks for that. So I played soccer. I played a lot of sports growing up. Cycling and soccer were probably my favorite. Baseball was my favorite growing up as well. But I ended up being best at soccer. And so when I was 17, I had an opportunity to compete on what was it called, a select team. So it was kind of an all-star team of soccer players to go to Europe, representing the state of Colorado. And we ended up going 10, 10, and 5. So I think we won half the games, lost, and tied. So we did fairly well. And then eventually I played in college at a smaller school in Kansas. But at some point I was like, okay, I'm not going to pursue that anymore because there wasn't a lot of professional soccer leagues, and so it wasn't really something to pursue. After my second transplant, I really got back into cycling, which I'd done growing up. And I really can't talk enough about the importance of athletics and sports or movement in my life, because every single day I ride my bike, I think there's one fundamental question, especially if there's a hill. There's one fundamental question every day I ride my bike, which is, can I do this? And then the second fundamental question that comes up is like, yes. So it's yes or no. Some days you can't, so you don't go. But the second question that comes up is, how well? Okay. And some days you're really awful. Like, I can't go up this hill very fast. I'm really awful today. I'm really slow. I don't feel good. I hate this. This is the worst thing in the world. And some days you feel pretty good. But whatever it is, like, that's kind of what you need to do every single day when you run a company that by its nature has never developed a certain technology before. You just have to get at it and do it every day and suffer, appreciate the suffering, and then appreciate the enjoyment of that exercise afterwards. Like, I feel better. I have more endorphins kicking around my body. So I really can't talk enough about the importance of athletics in my life. It's also been a great way to meet some people internationally through these international transplant competitions. And that's the basis of founding World Transplant Athletes, through meeting people over the years and being an advocate at an international, national, state, and local level.
Yeah, I feel like well, I mean, I guess two things that I would extract from what you said that I
You
definitely
tell me.
syner
I'm looking forward to this. I don't know.
the two things that I definitely extract from what you said that I definitely am in synergy with as well, because so I for a period of time I was able to run great distances and greatly enjoyed running. I mean, it was something that eventually I wound up having to give up, and I still to this day wish that I could go back to those times whenever I could run. But I used to sort of tell myself, it's like, look, even on down days, you just got to get up and you got to go do your at least the first mile. If you turn back after the first mile and just decide
Yeah.
at that point that you can't do it, at least you've gotten out there and you've sort of gotten underway with that struggle.
Yeah.
the second part is that I feel like athletics also teaches you a bit about breaking things down, because whether it's soccer and the periods that you have in soccer, or it's you want to go cycle for a super long distance. You're not just hopping on the bike and riding 100 miles. You got to sort of get your body acclimated to doing
Mhm.
that as well, unless you want to suffer from severe cramps, dehydration, and lots of pain. And
Yeah.
so I feel like all of these things sort of teach you um, things about the way humans have to interact. And it's not just in athletics, it also
Mhm.
plays true with creating a company or building a medicine or anything else that you want to go do in life.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I mean, I learned that. That's kind of the purpose of the book too, is like, I was an actor at some point, and like, okay, actors aren't necessarily athletic all the time, but through the practice of showing up in acting classes or rehearsing your lines or like going to a costume place to get your clothes, or if you're on set and, trying to mingle around craft services, whatever it is, like it's a certain process you put yourself through, and it's not easy. Like most of these things are not easy most of the time. But if we get a sample of a reward at some point, and usually the reward is intrinsic, almost always it is, then you always go to it. So I put the book together because very clear that some people, sometimes in times in my life, I didn't have the ability to be athletic, but I found other things that were simply, or excuse me, just as good as being athletic. So I just think anything you push yourself to do is worthwhile because it teaches you so much and teaches you things you can't ever utter in words. It just teaches you some basic, some basic knowledge that you can just use in your life all the time.
Absolutely. So UGenome is your fifth startup. So what have you carried forward from your previous startups, that you
Yeah.
learned that you definitely leverage now?
I think some of it's really basic stuff. I mean, it's a lot of hard work regularly. I wouldn't say daily because you can't kill yourself daily. I mean, there's a lot of days where I'm taking a nap, oftentimes in the middle of the day for an hour, but it doesn't mean after that hour you just like coast along. Like you have to get back to it. So I think there's just a lot of hard work, and it's not hard work for hard work's sake. Sometimes there is a pleasure in like getting into the zone, but if you're trying to accomplish some small thing like just tweaking a website properly, just analyzing some data properly, just doing one of these things properly, like these steps might be 3 steps, but there's all these contingencies that pop up. You have to really work at it to get it right. So I think there's a lot of hard work involved with that. From a leadership perspective, I think there's a lot of psychology and really inspiring people and making sure that people are reminded how wonderful and great they are, because most of us walk around with sort of deficit thinking. I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, and so forth. And that's without any boss or any guidance from anyone in the world. Like most of us walk around with like, I'm not very good at this particular thing. So I've always respond very well to the leaders that give very clear goals and then inspire people. And then, if there's a need for, some conversation elsewhere, then that's fine. But I don't think people respond to that. So I think I've gleaned, hard work and leadership a lot from this. And then, some other element is some belief. Like, why are you doing this? Like, our vision is to make genomic medicine personal and accessible for everyone. And I wake up every morning and I ask myself out loud, it's like, who are we going to be able to help today through our technologies? It's like we have to have a sense of mission and belief, and this is a kind of a connective tissue that feeds our actions, it feeds our emotions, it feeds everything. Like we have to have some sort of belief that what we're doing is going to make a difference in this world. So I guess those three things: hard work, leadership, and some sort of belief. And then, of course, the technologies themselves. I'm leaving out the biggest element for a lot of people, but for me, like the technologies themselves, they're fueled by someone's desire. I'm working with a colleague. He's working on something for cancer because he's motivated by a colleague of his that passed away. So he's using all this good brain, but he's motivated by something. That's why I kind of stick with these softer type of things when I give these responses. I think they're like fundamental to who we are as humans.
Yeah, I definitely think that these additive lessons that we all have in life, provide a great platform for all of us to not only differentiate ourselves, but also to differentiate the organizations that we're trying to build, or the companies that we're contributing to, or the science that we're contributing to. I feel like there is a there's an overarching, sort of theme that I found through doing all of these interviews, that, the path that somebody has taken to get to the point that they're at, not only makes them unique, but it also sort of, helps them point the next direction that they're going to go as well. And so, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Don. No, I love the conversations as well, and learning like why someone has got to the point where they are and why they're doing what they're doing. So I appreciate the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you share some of the innovative projects that you're working on at UGenome, and what are you currently proud of?
Yeah, well, I'm currently very proud of, and I don't know if you can see it perfect, can't see it too well. It's an at-home test kit. So it's personalized medication service. And so there's a lot of genetic tests out there. We're working with our partner Plexus DX as well. And so you can do an at-home test kit. I did it a couple of days myself. It's a swab, a cheek swab, not even a nose swab. And within a couple of weeks, I'm going to be able to get a readout of my genetic profile in terms of medications. And so, as a person who's had 2 kidney transplants, I take anti-rejection medications, and it's been pretty stable and so forth. But that doesn't mean that's going to be stable for the rest of my life. So it's going to be good to get a sense of which medications to take, which ones to avoid, but have some real power, and feel empowered, knowing that these are medications that I should take, and so forth. And in terms of the market, the real big problem we're trying to address with this personalized medication service and the companion software tool we're building called Propex is adverse drug reactions. The big numbers here are 106,000 people die every single year. 1.3 million people go to ER visits because of an adverse drug reaction. 350,000 people are hospitalized. And the number is striking. It's a $500 billion cost. It's the size of the economy of Sweden. Now, we know there's other people doing some great things out there as well, but we're really excited that we get to help a human be empowered by medications to take and which ones to avoid. And back to the same thing I said earlier, it's one thing to think of like these fancy treatments for X, Y, and Z, but so much of our treatment comes from a medication. It's the miracle of pharmacology. And I think the 21st century, one of the great tools we have is pharmacogenomics, is saying, you very specifically, Don, respond to this specific medication in this specific way. We can give you an enterprise level solution quickly. And that's miraculous. And if we're a small part of that and earn some revenue from that, and for the partners that we're going to work with, but fundamentally help another human being, that's very exciting. So I'm most excited right now about a chance to make some revenue, learn from the market, and then make our software products even better.
Yeah, the one, I mean, from a pharmacy standpoint, or any point of taking a drug, the one sort of example that I constantly use with people is with Benadryl. It knocks me out. I mean, I absolutely have to go to bed if I take Benadryl.
Okay.
My wife, you give it to her, she's up for, like she was given, like the best caffeine in the
Adderall.
world. So,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
totally different, reactions all in our same household, whether, we both wind up on Benadryl. But yeah, so that, I mean, I definitely have seen that in my own world as well, and not nearly as severe as trying to take, anti-rejection medication or cancer drugs or anything like that. It's very very
Yeah.
over the counter.
Well, but it's absolutely affects your quality of life that day. So maybe it's not as severe, but it is really important that day to figure it out which medication is good or which over-the-counter medication is good or bad for you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, if you were to look into the future, 5 to 10 years with Eugenome, where would you want to be? What would be underway, and what would the future look like?
Yeah, I would like to have, 1,000 case studies. I mean, so many case studies, I couldn't keep track of how many people we've helped in very specific ways. Make, good income so that we can pay, maybe another 1,000 people who've been a part of UGenome as employees, early investors, otherwise give them some income that they can look after their families and do some things they enjoy in this earth. Maybe sell the company, or maybe just then go to another company that has even greater potential to make an impact. So I don't see this as a one-off. I mean, this is sort of like I talked to a founder yesterday. He mentioned this is like a vocation for him, and it's probably me at this point too. Like I'm 7 days a week. I wake up thinking about it um, all the time, and I really hope that like person like Jaden Lee, Dr. Jaden Lee, who's our chief genomics officer, like learns all these cool things from this experience, and then he develops his own really cool things at some point. Dr. Peter Bannister does amazing things at some point as well. He's already done lots of amazing things. Kamal and Ben Stansfield and Karina and 25 other people I can mention, Alan Kohler, um, Miley, really incredible people at UGenome. Hopefully that they're inspired through this experience to stay with UGenome if that makes sense, or do incredible other things on their own through this experience that we're co-creating together as a group of people. So, I see a lot of good things. It's kind of like the citrus garden behind me. I want all these trees to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it interesting because I tell my wife all the time, like if we lived in a warmer climate, I would certainly want to plant all sorts of things that we buy from the store in our backyard. So
Yeah.
I could see that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't know, Don. I'm looking. I'm also trying to just to enjoy this daily experience because it's so easy to discombobulate yourself and have this separation. Like someday we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but someday maybe you will do X, Y, and Z. But did you enjoy it? Like I really enjoy our daily conversations and really trying to figure out how to advance the needle with a nonprofit or a company like yours or anyone. Like really trying to enjoy every single day of this, and it's not easy on a personal level or professional level at all. I mean, I put myself on the line. I'll just put it like that. But would I do anything else? No, I wouldn't. And I really want us to be successful at fundamentally help another human live better because that's lots of humans I never met generations before me toiled away in a lab somewhere late at night, whenever it was, whatever their life was going on, and I'm here because of them. And I get to be that person to help another human in some way, and we collectively as UGenome get to do that in some way. Then that's really an awesome privilege and opportunity as a group of people to do something for other groups of people down the line.
So I have a couple other questions about you.
Yes.
So in terms of innovation and your approach to innovation and more or less, how you focus on growing companies, do you find that your multicultural experience helps you, or your multilingual culture, experience helps you, in any specific way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I speak a few languages through my travels, and because I've studied them quite frequently, and I live just 30 miles from the border, so I get a chance to speak Spanish daily. So part of my PhD was in bilingual. So my research for my PhD was bilingual decision making. So that is the study of people who are making the same decision. Some people are using their first language and some are using their second language. And so I analyzed lots of data. And what I found is that oftentimes second language speakers make better decisions than first language speakers under the same circumstances. So I think what that informs me is that everyone we work with, no matter where they're from, no matter their cultural background or language capacity, likely is really intelligent, smart, and so forth. So I think that levels the field pretty well. I think generally I try to work fast, but more with principles, meaning like let's not uh, let's not have more than 7 principles for any given task. And this comes from work from George Miller in 1950s about memory, and he had this sort of saying of like the magic number is 7 ± 2, and I try to keep 7 as the maximum number to apply to any given process, whether it's just an operational process, a process in terms of our values, or a process in terms of technology development. Because as humans, we can only keep a certain amount of things in our mind at a given certain amount of things at a given time, and that's just how our brains operate. So let's not fight our brains and try to like overcomplicate things. Let's keep things limited. Now there's quite a bit of decision making support around this. There is the secretary problem and some other kinds of research that have been done showing like we have to limit the amount of information we use in order to make really good decisions even with AI tools. So I think my basic principle is trying to keep things elegantly simple in order to have focus to get real things done, as opposed to trying to make make things more complicated. Life is pretty complicated as it is with all this digital stuff we're engaging with on a daily basis. It's more complicated. So I think I really try to focus on simplicity and then focusing on our mission and vision and values as a company and working from that basis.
Yeah, I feel like it's an important grounding as well. I mean, I don't fluently speak any other language other than English, but certainly have muddled my way through Spanish and then also other languages in my travels. Just trying to be courteous to the people that are around me, but at the same
Yeah.
time knowing that I'm butchering their language as I'm doing it. But
But
it
I
does
think
take
that's I
a
think
lot
that's
of
it,
thought.
Don.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that's it. I think you hit on the point. Like I didn't say this, but I mean, every day you utter a sentence in a second language, there's a lot of humility
Mm.
every single time you do that, if it's not your first language, because the chances of you making a mistake or not sounding proper or accent free are really high. So to put yourself on the line over and over again and act with humility in that process, there's something about that that applies to technology. Like you have to be humble and you have to try, no matter how many times you fail. I got a lot of that from acting as well, but certainly through speaking languages in multiple countries and learning those languages from the ground up. You have to be humble and have to try. But then through my research, I know that that process means that I'm likely have some advantages that I can't see, but I have to trust.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What inspires you?
Um, this conversation, for example, I get inspired by a lot of stuff in any given day. Um, someone who, despite whatever circumstances, is working hard. So we're working with a person right now with UGenome who's dealing with a lot of different chronic kind of things, and it's a real pain, right? Because it kind of slays the person on a daily basis. Like they get up and they're sleepy because they're dealing with so many things, but the passion and energy this person has for their life and the hope that it's going to get better and the knowledge that they have all this capacity to do way more, like that person inspires me quite a bit. I find anyone who jumps in the game of starting a company pretty inspiring, frankly, because it's a maddening, crazy experience. It requires so much of any given person. I don't know. I'm inspired by so much. It's hard to say. I mean, if I go back to my book, I mean, great athletes inspire me. LeBron James is pretty inspiring. So is Messi. All these other phenomenal athletes. Women's basketball for Team USA is inspiring. Artists are inspiring of different sort. I mean, to watch someone paint who's phenomenal at painting, that's inspiring. So I don't know. It's hard for me to give one answer, but anyone, I guess, who says, I'm going to try to use my light source myself and interact with the world in some way, like kind of Raman spectroscopy in some way, like interact with light, with my light, and make something new and creative and different. I guess that person's inspiring to me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What concerns you?
Um, what concerns me is how we interact with the technologies that we have, especially right now with so much digital media and so forth. Like, I don't think it's all awful. I'm not someone who's against it. Like, there's a reason why it's here because people at some level wanted it, and it's exciting and it's fun that everyone gets to be a creator on TikTok and Instagram and everything else. It's very exciting. But if we don't balance that with some slowness and some system two thinking or some basic like human condition stuff, I'm going to go for a walk right now and slow down my mind.
Mm.
That concerns me if it overwhelms our desirability or sense of direction on how to look after ourselves. That really concerns me quite a bit. Also, the environment, I think, quite a bit. I mean, we have to do a lot better job looking after ourselves and the environment. And I think just looking after each other, if we don't have direct families, then finding a family that's our family, that we care about those people and we want to look after them, and that they in turn look after us. So that everyone has some sort of connection to some idea of family is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the first part of your answer with regards to like all of the digital technology that we have, I do feel
Mhm.
like humans best process of thinking and introspection and sort of expanding where we want to go next happens whenever we're most disconnected. And whatever your method of finding that is, whether it's a long bike ride, a long run, um, doing something else, some other mundane task that now all of a sudden allows your mind to just kind of you know think in a different way, is
Yeah.
so important and at this point in time, and it's hard to take that time out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. It's hard to take a time out to explore that space, right? Yeah, explore the inner space to eventually go back to outer space again.
Absolutely. Last question: what excites you?
Yeah. What excites me?
Yes.
Um, Someday I really want to sit courtside for an NBA basketball game. Someday I'd love to go to the World Cup and sit, courtside or right on the field. Olympics as well. So those kind of excite me. Riding my bicycle as fast as I can up a hill. I set a personal record this morning. That was pretty cool. I had to suffer a little bit because of it, but okay. Um, Talking to one of the co-founders for the company when they have like a new idea, and you can kind of sense in the vibrations of their voice and the look in their face and so forth, like this is something new and fascinating, and you're learning almost in real time with them. That's super exciting. One of my friend tells me about his son's travails going to a university and how difficult that is. I don't know, like I get excited by quite a bit, I have to say. I'm not like spastic, but there's lots of really exciting things in this life, in this world. And if we tune into them, we can be inspired all the time by lots of it. I think the trick in my case is just making sure that I can only take a portion of this excitement of the universe that exists and then put it into some cylinder and then focus that cylinder on a task to achieve something for life on Earth.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I had to come up with a title for this interview,
Okay.
the one thing that I would sort of take away is, um, the term FOMO is fear of missing out, right? So,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to think of the acronym in the right way, but the best way I could sort of reuse all of the other letters again is not
Okay.
effing missing out on life,
Yeah.
right? So just to think about the many of the things that you covered in this interview. I greatly appreciate it, and I've appreciated just listening to many of your answers as well. I wish you all the luck with UGenome and the things that you're working on. It sounds, amazing to hear some of the things that you have coming right around the corner. So thank you for being on Life Science Success, and thank you for sharing everything with us.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Don, to talk about Eugenome. Shared a little bit about me, and I'm really excited about our team, Dr. Jaden Lee and Peter Bannister, and all these other people I've mentioned to do wonderful things in this world.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Zach, for being on. I greatly appreciate it, and wish you well.
All right, bye.